This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are back here in the studio. We've got a number of great shows that are coming down the line here, covering a wide range of topics. We're actually going to go back and be looking at some older topics based on questions that you've been sending in. If you've got a question or a topic you specifically want on a show, just drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com, and we'll see about adding that onto the show list. So always interested in, if you've got something that's just nagging you that you always wanted to know, just drop that note, phil@killerinnovations.com. Today we have a guest here in the studio, a guest that actually I've been meeting with on and off here for probably the last 6 or 9 months or so, as he's been putting out his new book. Joe Toscano, he's a former design consultant for Google. He's won a bunch of awards on design and advertising. He writes for a lot of the publications, which I know a number of you read. And his book came out not too long ago. He's nice enough to give me a copy of it. I showed it off to some friends. People are just amazed at the design, the level of design that went into that book. So, hey, Joe, thanks for taking the time for being live here in the studio with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to do it in person.
Yeah, it's a little easier. You come to Colorado quite often, albeit you don't live here. You're in Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm there, well, most of the time, but maybe there like 1 week every couple months, and I'm probably here more often, actually.
Yeah, well, Joe and I were just comparing our travel schedules, right?
Yeah,
both of us have been on the road, and then we somehow got this synchronized to where we both converged into Colorado at the same time. I'm off to D.C. next week, so it's I get 1 week of sleeping in my own bed before hitting the road. One of the things I wanted to talk about, we want to talk about your book, but I'm also interested in having you talk about Beacon and the work that you've done in forming Beacon. Now, Beacon stands for Better Ethics and Consumer Outcomes Network. Yep. And the story behind Beacon is pretty interesting and very timely, given everything that we're seeing going on in the ethics of technologies and unethical uses of technologies. So share with us a little bit about your background and how Beacon came about.
Yeah, so Beacon is the current venture I'm working on. It came about from my experience out in the Valley. I've been in technology for about 8 years now, so I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. I've produced at a senior level. I understand the implications of what can happen as well. And out in the Valley, I was managing Google, me and my team, about 60 of us. And it was a great experience. We saw really cool technologies help build some of the stuff that you're now seeing today, help launch a lot of those products to the world. But also in doing so, we had a different view than a lot of people, right? Like a lot of the workers there are working on a single product versus as a consultant, you're seeing the system of Google, how it aligns, how they converge into the bigger picture. And I left not only because of what was going on at Google, but because of ethical concerns within the tech industry at large. We're now seeing a lot of that play out in the news, unfortunately. Yep. But yeah, I mean, the point of Beacon is that right now we have a lot of consumers that are inflamed, and if not inflamed, then scared of what's happening. We have a lot of regulators who are ready to appease their constituents, but yet there's not a lot of coherent conversation about exactly what's going on between these. So we have this world where there's a separation of knowledge, and the companies who are running this, they don't express it well, and that's probably a bit intentional. The point of Beacon is to open up those doors to the public. It's to help everyone understand enough about what's going on that they're not technical experts, they're not trying to go get a job at these companies, but they can talk about it. It's to help regulators begin to ask the right questions so that when we do make regulations, because it's going to happen, those regulations are informed and they have been thought through. And then lastly, the whole point of Beacon, the Better Ethics and Consumer Outcomes Network, is that through these fears, through these anticipations, people are screaming about things they want to be changed, but often it doesn't align with business practices. So we're taking ethics and removing it from the world of theory and trying to turn it into consumer outcomes so that we can then drive that into business in a way that drives better business as well. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just came back from the TED conference last week, so I was up in Vancouver. And the opening speaker Monday night, which is the opening session for TED, is the reporter from the Examiner in London that broke the story on the Facebook. Yeah. Right? And I mean, her talk just lit TED up for the entire week. Yeah. And in fact, the next day, Dorsey was there to defend Twitter. And he was on stage with Chris Anderson being interviewed. But none of the other tech CEOs would not go on stage after. Mm-hmm. But it generated a lot of the conversation around, what is the role of a leader in a tech organization to kind of set the ethical boundaries for what is proper and what is improper. Yeah. And what I found in the conversation with the other attendees at TED, though, was kind of hard to define what that boundary is. How do you do that?
It is. Yeah, no, it's very hard. I think we also saw Google tried to make an AI ethics board, and that dissolved within a week. I don't think that speaks poorly on Google in terms of like them being an evil company, but I do think it speaks very strongly to the fact that it's incredibly difficult to make something like this as a company because ethics goes beyond logic and technical implementation. Ethics goes to morals and the heart of communities, and that changes depending on where you are.
Right.
Not only across the world, but even across the United States, we have incredibly diverse communities. I mean, that's also a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I am from Nebraska, which everyone's like, what? How did you come from Nebraska? Like, don't they do cows there? And yeah, I mean, it's true. It's a different world than it is in Silicon Valley, but that's a big reason why I left, because I was sitting out there and working with brilliant people, working on incredible companies, and I just realized the disparity in knowledge about what's going on between what's happening out there and when I went home.
The bubble effect. Like I spent a good chunk of my career in the Valley, and I've always been amazed at how people in the Valley think that the neighborhood they live in the Valley is representative of the rest of the United States. And I'm like, you're not even close.
No,
even close.
I mean, I went home. I remember in 2017, I went home and I was teaching a guest lecture class at the University of Nebraska. And I went to go get lunch in between classes, and I paid with my Apple Pay, which is standard in the Valley, right? Not even thinking about it. I start to walk away and they thought I was stealing. And it's, it's just, it's not a norm there, right? It's not like they literally, I asked them, I was like, have you not seen that before? I just paid. They're like, no one's ever used that here. And that was in Lincoln, which is, I mean, Bernie Sanders won in Lincoln. It's not like they're, completely out in the country. So yeah, it's a different way of life. And none of them are dumb, right? It's not that they're dumb. It's like, I tell people if someone in the Valley popped their tire, they're going to call a professional. Someone in Nebraska has trouble with their computers, they're going to call a professional. It's just different points of view and ways of life, and that's what makes the world go round. But that's why a big reason why I stepped out is I saw that. I said there's an opportunity here, especially with automation and what's coming and shifting tides with the jobs. Like, there's a very big opportunity to help move communities forward and to feel good about what you're doing, as opposed to just building a product that is just going to be kind of piece off every single day.
Yeah, but I mean, it does put a unique burden on leaders, right? So how do you, you're going to talk to Mark Zuckerberg or Sheryl, or you're going to talk to the Google boys or whatever. How do they, as a CEO, define, what that is? And they've got to be a little careful, right? Because they can't. They can't just define it based on the Valley's definition of ethics, because they're getting measured in their platform is actually used to expose their own issues with ethics.
Right, yeah. And it is a huge political issue for them, especially at this point in history. I think we saw Zuckerberg try to take a stab at it, where he did his whole country tour. I think that's kind of the beginnings of what has to happen, though. These people have to step away from their bubble and go expose themselves to the rest of the world. Not that they haven't, but they need to do it more in depth and really have conversations. And I think then build those companies with people who can represent those parts of the world. Because if you don't have employees that can put those companies together in a way that represents those ethics or those thought processes, then you're going to get pushback. You're always going to if you create a monoculture. Yeah.
Right. And this plays out also. What I want to talk about when we come back from this commercial break is talking a little bit about regulators and what the role of regulators. Mark Zuckerberg is actually saying he's looking forward to regulation. And I'm kind of a little suspicious on, what's the real motivation on that. So when we come back from this commercial break, we'll pick up our conversation with Joe Toscano and continue our conversation on Beacon. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We're continuing our conversation with Joe Toscano, talking about Beacon, Better Ethics and Consumer Outcomes Network. Now, before we went to the commercial break, I raised this issue around the whole issue of regulators. And not too long ago, Zuckerberg stands up and says, looking for regulators to step in. Now, I have an opinion as to why he's doing that. I'm interested on what your thoughts on this are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally think that it has a lot to do with the fact that they don't want to define it, right? It's something where if they can have the regulators do it externally, it's better for them from a publicity view, that they didn't set these rules and they didn't make this problem that comes out of whatever happens. I also have a fear with what he's kind of saying, though, because he's putting the weight on people who've seen so far are not quite coherent on what they're trying to put together. And so that scares me quite a bit,
Well, look, and I've seen it happen in a lot of industries that are heavily regulated where, bad actors in those industries, there's great companies in those industries, but there's bad actors, and the bad actors use the regulation as air cover, saying, well, you can't blame me. I'm complying with the regulation.
Yep.
If you think I should be acting differently, then you need to get the regulators to make the change. But I'm good because, so basically they use it as as air cover, to kind of shield themselves, from any form of criticism about any actions they made by just simply saying, whoa, I'm complying with the regulations. And look, regulators historically cannot keep up at the pace of innovation.
Oh, especially today.
Right. And then you end up with all these unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Right. You look at, the GDPR regulations in Europe. Now you've got these, then California's got to do one
CCPA,
better.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at the California regulations, any kind of small or medium-sized company, basically, I don't know how you do anything that's compliant.
Right.
With the new California regulations, right?
Yep.
And again, I think it's an issue, like you were saying, about are the regulators really the ones in the best position?
Yep.
Or is it special interest groups representing their constituencies? And all of a sudden you got to, throw everything into the mixing bowl, let's stir it up and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the GDPR was, it's great in starting a conversation, but it has been very troubling for many companies, especially the SMBs, smaller businesses. Same with the CCPA, and I've recently been reading the Consumer Data Protection Act that's getting spoken about within Congress right now. There are definitely things that are going to really harm small businesses and sometimes protect the monopolies, even enforce them at some points, which I think that's, again, Zuckerberg saying, well, you guys should figure it out because then maybe you mess up and it's in our benefit. That's why we're doing our work with Beacon. We believe that there are certain things that, one, we need to help regulators with because the law is going to happen, but two, also things that just need to remain informal and driven by business. And so part of our for-profit side of things is helping to create products that can help those SMBs get through all this stuff. Our first product that we're going to be launching in the next few months is basically you can think of it like a Squarespace for your legal agreements. So that you can go in and just tap a few buttons of like, this is what's happening on our platform, and it will generate that legal agreement for you, and you're compliant. You don't have to go hire a lawyer that's $5,000 an hour. You don't have to go out and repurpose your product and spend $250,000 to re-engineer it. We'll just build kind of the plugins for you. So that's some of the work we're doing on the more technical side. And then on the nonprofit side, it's education, it's research, it's creating public safety tools. So that we can educate consumers to ask or to demand more of these companies and their regulators and also inform regulators so that they can begin to ask the right questions.
So let's take a step back. So Beacon's got the for-profit side and a not-for-profit side.
Yeah.
Why that structure?
Yeah. Well, because there's some more inherent risk that we're taking with the for-profit side. It runs like a startup. We want the nonprofit to live beyond whatever we do with the for-profit. We have partnerships with University of Nebraska set up and with the Digital Futures Initiative, which is going to educate people across the nation. So we want that to be its own entity, and that's why we've set it up that way. Also, there's some things that we believe that just shouldn't be for profit. It's just for public good, and that's what the not for profit is. But also, we're directors of the nonprofit, and we do have to pay our bills. So we have the for profit side, which comes in the driving the business. It's us consulting with companies to help them get through this stuff. It's us creating products that we see as opportunities to plug into these solutions and scale things up faster, so that we can get through this regulation and not be so cumbersome in that way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you don't think of needing to have two sides, right?
Yeah.
There was an attempt to try to create the B Corp as the way to get around that, but that still doesn't keep it as. Look, I run two nonprofits, 501c3 charities, and let me tell you, the legal regulation on a 501. Well, you and I talked about this when you were setting up your nonprofit.
No, I'm very happy that I have someone that's doing that for me.
Get ready. Strap on the belts and suspenders because
absolutely.
U.S. government looks at 501c3s very, very closely.
Yeah.
And you can get yourself in a world of hurt if you don't do it the right way.
Yeah. And it's too bad that we don't have some kind of legal arrangement for businesses that can operate in that, for profit, but also the public good. We used to. That's what Mozilla set up as. Am I wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. They were like one of the last tech companies to kind of get that agreement.
Well, and that's why they set up the B Corp, right? So it's saying, okay, my primary focus is not my shareholder. My primary focus is social good.
Yeah.
And so, because otherwise, by law, if you run a corporation, your fiduciary responsibility as an officer is your shareholder.
Yeah.
You always, not even your own self-interest. It's your shareholder self-interest.
Yeah.
B Corp allows you to be clear and define that, no, it's not my shareholder, it's somebody else.
Yeah.
And then people can choose to fund or invest or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's still messy. It's not.
It is. It's not well defined.
It's not clean.
It's a state-by-state thing.
Well, look, you're talking about ethics, right?
Yeah.
You look at all the, going back to Enron or now Theranos, right? You got these poster child, right? So anybody looking at any kind of an organization, they're always kind of giving you the side look like, okay, what is it I don't know? Are you biased, or you got an agenda, or you, right? Yeah. So I think your approach with splitting them into two makes it clear as I'm for profit because I got to put food on the table, but at the same time I'm focused on the social good, and Beacon's nonprofit is set up to have a much longer life.
Yeah.
Than making sure that has its sustainable structure.
Yeah.
Separate from the for-profit business.
Yeah. Well, and in full transparency, we also have the for-profit because there's certain aspects of this that we believe that we need to get a little bit faster capital than grants or donation money or whatever.
Yep.
We just need the speed to protect consumers from what's happening and to plug this stuff into companies. So that is also a consideration that we took into play. Is the nonprofit is absolutely, that's what it started as. We actually just set up the for-profit about 6 months ago. So it's.
Yep, great. When we come back, we're going to pick up our conversation on talking about Beacon. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Joe Toscano talking about Beacon. Now, you've been out there talking with a number of leaders, regulators, government officials, and countries around the world on this. If you were to sit down with a new leader who's interested in thinking about ethics in their business, given everything in the profile, what's the one thing that they should think about changing their mindset going into changing their organization?
Yeah. So the thing that we talk to them most about is how to fundamentally refocus their business away from the quarterly, pure quantitative statistics into the longer term and engaging the qualitative analysis.
Yeah. Well, now you're into my field of passion right now. I think the quarterly number thing just forces organizations to make bad decisions.
Yeah.
And again, it gets back to the fact that by law, particularly public corporations, fiduciary responsibility is to the shareholder. And you get this Pavlovian loop between what does a CEO do to drive, an uptick in the share price. And then it becomes this death cycle that can lead you into very bad decisions and actual destruction of long-term value.
Yeah, and I think that actually is one of the biggest reasons why we're in this whole era of addictive technologies. It's the fundamental cores of why they're driving business, right? Like, the purpose of getting an addiction is to get people in more, to drive those attention and engagement statistics, and to move the business forward. I don't think that from a business perspective, right, just business, that's not evil to pursue. But from a human perspective, it's destroying our communities. It's destroying our people psychologically. It's spreading disinformation. It's doing a lot of bad things to humanity.
Well, even on the corporate side, right? How many jobs got lost by some of these companies making bad decisions, right? You look at, we talk about the Valley, right? I've been doing a bunch of digging into on the whole Theranos thing. How does an organization get to be that big and on the front page of Forbes, front page of Fortune, prime keynote spots at every major conference that's out there, including the TED conference, and then have the whole thing implode? Nobody was willing to stand up and say, the emperor has no clothes.
Yep.
Stop. Don't, and it got into this self-feeding problem.
Right. It's especially the Valley right now. It's there's a lot of hype machine, that pushes it out there. Investment goes into things just because everyone's trying to not get locked out or to be the first to that,
Is there a thought process you think that needs to be applied that maybe is a little different given that, what is your product? I mean, I just published an article over on Medium. For those of you listening to the show, you can go check it out. But it's talking about my experience as the CTO at HP, where I wish I had been able to make changes there to think differently about how we basically cut R&D to the point where the entire innovation funnel got destroyed because of a CEO who just, got caught in the quarterly number problem.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that one of the bigger problems that we have right now, like I said, is the fact that it's now all based in an attention economy, or a lot of it is. And in that, there's not really a defined production value. You go to investors and say, we have this many more monthly users, or we're getting this much more engagement, so give us this much more money. And really, those are just proxy values. These companies, it's not like Coca-Cola, where we sold X amount more bottles of Coke this year or whatever. They're proxy values that they're operating on. Do I think that the industry is a fraud as a whole? No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I do think there's a lot of room for innovation and figuring out how to define what the production value is of these companies of attention, because there is a lot of value in it, right? But who is actually getting the production value versus who is just using the platform? How do they drive revenue in a way that they're charging the people who are getting that production value versus right now, they're just treating all of their users as the product itself.
Yeah, someone's estimated, for instance, if you took just total advertising revenue divided by the number of active users on Facebook, the U.S., because it has the highest ad value, it works out to be, if you were to pay for that service,
Bucks.
No, more. It's like a couple $100 a year.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And so the question is what is the value of your attention?
Yeah.
Right?
Sure, yeah.
Now, overseas, it's, pennies.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Running an ad in Rwanda, not going to generate a lot of Amazon buys.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so you get this, wide ranging, but it also asks the consumer, like, would you be willing, is that value exchange appropriate? Good enough for you?
Yeah.
Or do you want to get compensated? Meaning, if you're going to advertise to me, do I get to participate in the advertising?
Yeah.
Or do you as a consumer are willing to pay so you don't get the advertising?
Yeah, and I do think advertising is a big part of it. The other thing that I think gets glanced over every single time that we talk about data, not you and I specific, but like as a culture, is the fact that data is what's training all these machines. So inherently these companies have turned billions of people into unpaid laborers, right? I think that's where the room for innovation is. Let's actually figure out what data is worth and start to use it as the monetary, asset that it is.
Well, think about it though. If you look at Facebook or Google or Twitter or any of these guys, right? They're all about behavior modification.
Absolutely.
They're using the data to modify your behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as humans, we also tend to swing to the negative. We're always a little suspicious, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you have a belief system, and you have an engine that says, "I'm going to feed that human nature," because it measures it by engagement. You tend to engage when either something agrees with your mental model or alarms you, right? You like to watch the video of the cute kitten, but it's not like a high level of engagement.
Yeah.
But if someone comes out and says something against a political party or a politician you like, you're going to react.
Yeah.
What happens? You train the engine.
Yeah.
The engine does more of that. You more engaged. The engine gets reinforced. It trains more of that. And now we're down into this rat hole.
Well, I mean, the way the internet works right now and the news is the way it's spread, right? It's like if the internet were a highway and on the side of the highway there was a car accident that everyone's looking at, right? The internet would think we need more car accidents. Right.
Exactly.
And we are in this current state of car accidents.
That is a great analogy.
Everywhere. I know. Yeah, it's really bad, but that's what a machine does, right?
Yep.
Machines are good at certain things.
Yep.
They are not that great at determining when they need to let up.
Exactly.
Well,
that's
what humans are for.
There's no human in the loop, which I think is part of the problem, which gets into the whole issue of ethical AI. You're being able to audit the AI, so there's avoiding bias and how do you deal with it. We've recently hired Dr. Bernardo Huberman to head up the AI research here.
He's a brilliant guy.
And and part of what Bernardo's done this blog post. You can go find it over on cablelabs.com.
Yep.
But it was all talking about this whole issue of how do you think about AI and ethical AI, and it's a pretty interesting topic. Hey, as we come wrapping up here in segment 2, Joe, if people want to track of what you're doing, both sides of Beacon, where's the best place for them to follow what you're up to?
Yeah, right now we can be reached at designgood.tech. You can sign up for our newsletter there, and that's the best way. We don't have social media, and we probably won't pick up social media because it's so saturated, and we don't really care to be another post in your timeline. If you want to know what's going on, we have a newsletter. You can email us directly, and we will respond as quick as we can. Other than that, we have events. My book is out. It's called Automating Humanity. That's on Amazon. You can find that. And we look forward to connecting with whoever's interested in connecting with us and moving forward.
And we'll have links for all of that on the show notes. But it's interesting on no social media.
Yeah, man.
That is walk the talk, man. Walk the talk.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what it is. It's a thing where I've built this whole thing off of my income that I saved up. We have no investors at this point. We may take some, but we're working to build a business, and we're doing it the way that we believe should be done. Whether we starve or whether we float, that will be up to the community.
Man, that is great. That is great. Joe, thanks for coming and spending the time here with Killer Innovations. We'll be right back after this commercial break. We have another episode of 5 Minutes to New Ideas, so don't go anywhere. And again, we will have all of the links so that you can connect with Joe over on the show notes over at killerinnovations.com. And I've got his book. Love it. So check it out. Hop on over to Amazon. You'll be, it is really eye-opening. And follow Joe. Keep up with what he's doing. Appreciate it. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Back in the early days of this show, I would share what I called a killer question in each episode. These questions were designed to be used in your personal, team, or organization's innovation efforts. Now, based on feedback from listeners just like you, we've decided to bring it back with some improvements. Each episode of the Killer Innovations has a segment that I'm now calling 5 Minutes to New Ideas. It's designed for the creative mind looking for that next great idea. Each episode will challenge you to think differently about yourself, your business, and your products and services by asking unique, funny,
and sometimes crazy questions. These questions are designed to force you to look beyond the obvious and to uncover ideas and opportunities you never before considered. So, get out your notebook and be ready to uncover that game-changing idea. Here is 5 minutes to new ideas. As it says in Psalm 90:10, we are allotted 70 years to do with as we please. Of that, we will spend the equivalent of 23 years and 4 months of it asleep. We will work 19 years, 8 months practicing our religion, 10 years and 2 months in recreation. We will spend 6 years and 10 months eating and drinking. 6 years we'll spend traveling, and 4 years we will spend being sick. Time is one of those resources that we never seem to have enough of. It's a perishable resource. You cannot put it on the shelf to use it later. We are given 1,440 minutes each and every day, and once it is gone, it is gone. While many will just go through their day as they always have, others have found ways to prioritize what is important when it comes to time. There's a story of a life insurance agency in which all of the underwriters come to work at 7 a.m., and they leave for home a few minutes before 4. By doing that, they reduce their daily travel time from 2 hours to just 40 minutes. They miss the rush hour traffic. The result is a net profit of well over 6 hours per week, or 25 hours a month. The yearly savings over a period of 50 weeks is 300 hours. That is the equivalent of more than 7 40-hour weeks. Not a bad way to add 7 weeks to a year. An additional benefit or dividend is that the hours from 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning are typically quiet and they can get twice as much work done. So, is the work from home person out of luck in finding a way to save time? No. George Bernard would regularly share a valuable lesson about time management. When asked why he wore a beard, he said that at first it was vanity, but later he said it was common sense. The common sense reason was that he had written several plays in the time saved by not shaving. For most of us men, shaving takes about an hour a week or 50 hours a year. That's a week's worth of work. Now, for some reason, people seem curious as to why I wear the same thing every day. A black golf shirt, blue jeans, and the same style of cowboy boots I've worn for years. Why? As I've shared before, early mornings are very precious to me, as that is my time to write, to be creative without distraction. My monochromatic style is born out of my desire to reduce or eliminate cognitive load. The thought of getting up in the morning and needing to make yet one more decision, such as what color shirt or pants to wear, is just too much. Switching decision context from thinking about what I'm working on creatively to what colors shoes match what I'm wearing disrupts my subconscious mini brainstorms. By wearing the exact same thing every day, I can keep my subconscious working creatively all the way to work and gain an extra hour of ideas, not to mention not losing time standing in my closet wondering what to wear. The added benefit? I can pack for a trip in half the time it used to take me. When it comes to translating ideas to innovation, time limiting the early efforts of an idea forces everyone to make sure that the idea is worth this highly valuable resource. If the idea is worth it, great, put more time behind it. If not, then stop and reallocate those resources to the next best idea. That is what we call managing your opportunity cost. How should you think about opportunity cost? David Henderson of the Hoover Institute describes it as looking at the value of the next highly valued alternative use of that resource. If, for example, you spend time and money going to a movie, you cannot spend that time reading a book. And you cannot spend that money on something else. If your next best alternative to seeing the movie is reading the book, then the opportunity cost of seeing the movie is the money spent plus the pleasure you forego by not reading the book. So, if you mismanage the time your team works on innovation, whatever they are not able to work on is your opportunity cost. You need to step back and ask yourself the hard question. Is what we are working on right now worth the opportunity cost of not working on something else? What ways could you help your team save time from things of low value so they had more time to work on activities of higher value? Maybe 1 or 2 fewer meetings a week? How will you prioritize your 1,440 minutes today? I'm Phil McKinney, and thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join in. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. Beyond this show, I write about my personal experiences of being in the innovation game for the last 2 decades. Topics include innovation, creativity, culture, team building, metrics, frustrations, leadership, and how to win. You can find that content over at philmckinney.com. You can also find out information about my book, Beyond the Obvious, including extensive excerpts over at beyondtheobvious.com. You can find hardcover, digital, and audio versions of my book on Amazon or wherever you get your books from. Now, the reason I started this show back in 2005 was to pay back my early mentor. My first mentor, Bob Davis, invested an immense amount of time in training and coaching me, which had a major impact on my career. When I went back and asked him how I could pay him back, he laughed and said I couldn't. I had to pay it forward. If I could ask for a favor, could you help me pay it forward? How? 1, by giving us a rating wherever you get your podcast, as that helps spread the word. And 2, by telling others about the show. If you want to be part of the conversation between the shows, I hang out in the Innovators community on Slack. The Innovators community is a private community of vetted innovators who help each other succeed. Check it out at theinnovators.community. This episode of Killer Innovations was produced by the Innovators Network. You can find the show notes and the entire show catalog going back to 2005 at killerinnovations.com. I'll talk to you next week, and in the meantime, go out and change the world with your killer innovation. Bye-bye.